The Defund the Police, that's been going on. That's something that officers have been dealing with for as far back as I can remember. Departments especially have been understaffed for years. But how ironic is that these same people that won't want to fund these programs or fund the departments are the same ones that want the police officers there when they themselves need assistance in the public eye. There's a reason why officers aren't trained as well as they should be because of lack of funding. There was nothing worse than having to go give service to somebody that called, and at the end of it, they tell you to F off. You're welcome. Have a good day. You drive by. You got kids giving us the middle finger. You old ladies telling us to screw you. Like, it's just, again, the picture that was painted has been set by the media long ago as to us being the bad people. And the DAs in California don't want to file anything on any type of these thefts. It's political. It's a complete political thing. When people actually go out to vote, do they know who they're voting for?
Stay tuned, stay curious. Enculturation Podcast. All right, Bryant, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking time to come here. I really appreciate you being open to that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You're going to be my first guest that has jiu-jitsu experience.
Cool.
Yeah. Although my first invitation for that is actually one of my old friends. Her name is Jen. Mm-hmm. And she's actually the person that really reprogrammed my brain into what's possible with jiu-jitsu. Because she's like a very small, short Filipino girl, right?
Right.
And then we have big colleagues, right? And she's like, "Oh yeah, I have no problem choking this guy out." I'm like, but she's like a tiny person, right? Yeah. And then I was like, because when I think of jiu-jitsu, I think of these big guys, kind of like yourself, where you look the part, you know. Right. but when it comes to her, she's this tiny Filipino girl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, so jiu-jitsu is possible with all that.
Absolutely. It's funny because you describe exactly what I have plentiful on my team is small Asian girls. And they're very good. And a lot of them, they strangle the big guys, and they just use their size and speed over their opponent's strength and all that. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So let's definitely dive into that in a little bit. I see you also have background in law enforcement.
Yep.
Police officer. Did you do that concurrently with jiu-jitsu at the same time?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I was doing jiu-jitsu before I was police officer, and then I was obviously training while I was police officer, and even now. So it's been 21 years. So yeah,
amazing. So not only are you the first BJJ practitioner, but also the first law enforcement.
Oh, cool. Right on.
So I'm happy to dive into those topics with you because I have so many questions. Yeah, especially with living in the Bay Area, and then there's so much changes happening the past few years. From all the stuff that happened in 2020 and then into Defund the Police and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I guess we can start with what got you into law enforcement?
It's funny because I originally wanted to be in the military. My dad served 2 tours of Vietnam. He was in the Army. He actually enlisted himself. He didn't get drafted. He put himself in there and because he wanted to serve. And after him going through war, he told me and my brother, he was like, "Hey, I never want you guys to see that. So I hope that you never want to take that route of being in the military." So that kind of shut that down. And I was like, dang it, I really wanted to be in the military just like my dad. But went through college and went through certain little career paths. I was like, well, I think I'll try this now, the law enforcement thing. So dove right in and I fell in love with it. So it was.
What did you love about it? And also, was it like the actual real world experience? Was it different than what you thought it was going to be?
It wasn't too far off from what I thought it would be. Definitely, it was all about the daily changes of what you have coming to you in regards to interaction with the police and the community, meeting and having to deal with certain individuals of every race, shape, form, you name it, and the calls for service that you never know what was going to pop off. So you go into work not knowing what you're going to deal with. And so that's why even, you hear these days, like when people describe a routine traffic stop, nothing is ever routine out there. Everything is always different every single time, every single day. So that to me was the biggest change and to what I thought it could be like, but I loved it. That's what really made me want to dive right more into it.
So was there any part of you that was like, oh, I'm gonna stop bad guys, or I want to like preserve the peace in the community? Which part outside of you on?
It's funny because when I first got in there, you really want to like catch everybody. You want to be that guy. You want to be like you see in the movies and the TV shows and catch the bad guys. But then it starts to get to a point where you're like, all right, and am I handling situations correctly to where I'm not putting myself or others at harm? Am I making the best and wisest decisions in regards to my being there for the call for service, right? So it's almost like sometimes it's at the officer's discretion as to what they're going to do with certain situations, right? And you don't always want to run and gun. You don't always want to be like a cowboy and get out there and chase people, because even that gets old. Like not only that, but like it becomes like a danger, to yourself and to others. And where I was working, you get to a point where like, all right, been there, done that. And I'm just going to kind of do my job as it comes and still protect the peace, protect the people and all that kind of stuff. But it's still enjoy what I like to do.
Yeah, let's unpack the training or curriculum for law enforcement. Since you also have a lot of experience in jiu-jitsu, like how did you perceive that training? Was it what you expected, or was it like, what was it good or bad about it?
Well, you go through 6 months of training in the police academy, which it's at least a somewhat doable and ideal amount of time for somebody to condense a lot of information and try and retain it. It's grueling. It's hard. I always described it to people as it's kind of like college and boot camp wrapped into one. They expect you to obviously study and know all that you're supposed to know about law enforcement and case law and all these things that come up. Study the ins and outs of where you're going to be working, as far as like the city, the size of the city, the whereabouts of the banks, the schools, all the important things in the area that you need to know. Where are the hot spots? What type of personnel and clientele are you dealing with out there? Because every city's different. But at the same time, they're like, all right, we're going to go run 10 miles today. It's like, all right, great. And then after that, then we're going to work out, because, they want to push you and they want to take you to limits that you probably never pushed yourself, which I love, because I also come from a wrestling background. So I started wrestling at a young age, and wrestling training is like nothing else. It's like, it's the hardest thing you could ever do. So to me, like, sweet, how far do you want me to go? How hard do you want me to do this? Because I can do it. And on the flip side of it, also, like, they put you through, shooting training, scenario training, like real hands-on, real world type stuff to see how you do when given the situation right in front of you, which I love too, because now it's like, it's all right, it's to go time. Now I have to actually perform, which again, based on my sports and everything that I did, it was all about performance. So I really enjoyed that. And then there's the other side of it, where it's like they want to kind of mold you into a perfectionist of sorts, to where your appearance is a lot, and it should be. No one wants to see a sloppy mess coming to help them out. If I come here and you say, hey officer, I need help, and I'm sitting there with my shirt undone, my boots a mess, and my flies open, and my my gun's hanging out, like, you're gonna be like, wow, that's very unprofessional. It's kind of like, people in the business world, they come in with their suits on and all because they want to do the part, they want to dress the part, and you want to look the part. Same thing when it comes to law enforcement. So in the police academy, they teach you all these things: how to shine your boots, how to press your uniform, how to keep everything to a T, and make sure you look that part of the profession, which I appreciate as well, because it teaches you a lot. And I've seen people change. People that I went through the process with, they went from a hot, sloppy mess to this squared away type individual. Like, wow, this really did good for your life. So, and then like I had a lot of people I went through the process with that were prior military, and to them it was like right back into the fold of things. So, it has its advantages a lot, I'd say. But then at the same time, you could see the I guess you could say the non-hackers, the people that couldn't take it. They didn't like the level of discipline that it calls for. They didn't like somebody, screaming in your face when it called for it, because that's part of the process too. And you learn that, it's kind of like, as you go through the process, then you get to the real portion of it. You're like, oh, now I know why we did all that, because these situations that have come up. It's like testing, or it's like studying for a test of any type. I remember in college going, oh man, this studying is terrible, and then I get to a certain test, like, oh, no wonder why I studied it, because now I'm being tested on it, and there it is. So the same thing can be said with preparation for law enforcement. But there were definitely some ups and downs in regards to what I feel was good and what was bad.
What are those things?
I'd say it was about 90% good of what they teach you, because they want to prepare you. And given that they have 6 months, which is not a lot of time if you think about it.
Yeah. Why is that? Where does that 6 months come from?
I'm not sure exactly why that number is there. I know it's gotten lengthier over time.
Yeah, because I don't know much about the training, and I obviously haven't been through it, but 6 months sounds like a short period of time.
It seems like a short period of time, but they break things down pretty good in regards to each week is an area of study, just like you were in college, right? And it's all in preparation for the final testing process at the end, which is all what they call the scenario testing. So let's say you go through domestic violence training, right? And you study the ins and outs and all the penal codes that apply to whatever you could be dealing with on a day-to-day. Then it'll go to the end, like, okay, do you remember your domestic violence training? And then, all right, well, here's your domestic violence scenario test. You're called to do this, and this is what you're dealing with. Ready, go. And you're like, all right. So you're kind of like putting into like an impromptu acting type situation with role players and whatnots, and they want to see how you respond. Are you following the letter of the law in regards to what you've been taught? Are you advising these people? Are you asking the right questions? Are you taking all the correct steps to make sure your case is handled for that person that called for your help? So.
Yeah, you mentioned like asking all the right questions. Like, what kind of questions would you be trained to seek out?
9 times out of 10, it's always the basic information. What is your name? Do you need help? Right? And if someone's hurt or whatever, you get them some sort of 911 to come and help them out, AMR, whatever service they feel they need to be helped out. And if there's physical injuries that are visual, clearly you're going to get them sort of help immediately. But then it just comes down to, like, again, domestic violence. Like, okay, where are you hurting? Where did it happen? What happened? Where is this person? So you're trying to basically fill a timeline and a story of what happened. And it can seem like a lot when you're doing it. And I've seen officers, and it happened to me too. Like you kind of like overload when you're doing your report writing, and you're adding way too much content where it should be stick with the actual facts of what happened, follow the timeline of who, what, when, where, why, and then you check off the boxes. All right.
Yeah. As far as situational awareness, do you feel like law enforcement gave you a more comprehensive awareness of situations,
Absolutely.
Or was it like, did you start getting a bias for seeking out like problems, or what could go wrong?
No, it definitely gave me a much better. It opened my eyes to more situational awareness in regards to my surroundings, what I'm at, what I'm doing, who I'm with, and where this situation could lead. I definitely look out for myself in regard to, I don't put myself in certain situations where I know certain type of people will be around, or something that could cause harm, or, something that I don't need to be there. And, and everybody has their own way of living their life. I don't walk around going, oh, I'm so scared of doing anything. No, I live my life pretty free and do whatever I want. But, I make sure I'm not trying to put myself in bad situations. But it's one of those things where you become more observant, as some would say, like you become a trained observer, and immediately, even to this day, like when I walk into a room, immediately I'm scanning around, I'm looking, and I'm seeing what's in that guy's hand, who how many people are in this area or whatever. Is there another way to get out? when I am driving around, even to this day, I'm looking around look for probable cause to stop a vehicle. It's kind of like it's just ingrained in me now, and you look for all the little things because it just kind of never leaves you.
You have any like situations where when you pull someone over and it escalates to something way worse?
Absolutely. So many times. Oh, man.
And then could you spot it happening beforehand, or it escalated without any warning or foresight?
Yeah. Many times I've been on traffic stops. Like I said, they're never routine. I've been on traffic stops with people that you would be like, oh my God, that dude's big, huge, and scary. He's probably going to want to fight you. And they were the nicest people. Versus I've dealt with, small little old ladies, and they're like the worst people that will scream at you, yell at you, call you all kinds of names. And the best you can say is have a good day, So, you can never judge the book by its cover, but I have definitely been in some bad situations on traffic stops. And
does the unpredictability of each situation or each day cause any kind of anxiety or worry about like what could happen? Like, does that ever play a role?
It can, and I think that varies from person to person. I've had partners in the past where they didn't feel totally comfortable with how certain situations were about to unfold. So they're like, hey, can you come with me? Because I feel like I'm going to need help, which is totally fine. That's what your teammates are there for. But I was never kind of, jammed up in that sense. I always felt pretty confident in myself, even if I was by myself to go handle a situation. Been in a bunch of situations where I was actually just by myself handling multiple people, multiple cars and incidents to where I was like, well, this is pretty heavy. I could use some help. But, again, I carried and did my duties and felt okay.
Yeah, with situations being so dynamic, is there either a official checklist or a personal checklist that you go through to make sure that you're responding correctly to the situation? Like, because it's all happening in real time, right?
Yeah. Anything that's happening as what they call real time, as you said, but also something that happens immediately, like an immediate emergency. You have to know how to respond and react. And I can definitely contribute my training to everything that I've been through. Even in personal, my personal life, it carried through, and that's what's crazy. It's like you see yourself doing things even when you're off the clock, going, "Wow, I'm glad I was trained that way because I responded in this type of manner," And it all like I said, in my opinion, even as far back as when we first started talking, like you're like, "Wow, your voice is really, can you hear it?" I attribute that to speaking to the public and learning that from law enforcement. So everything from speaking to knowing like the right steps and checking the boxes, as you said, it comes from my training.
Really? You can learn all that in 6 months? That's amazing.
Well, not in 6 months, but over time. Over time, like I learned how to speak much better when I was on the job. I learned how to handle people, whether it be verbally or physically or whatever, much better, each time I did it. So repetition over time made me better. And, it's just one of those things where the more you do it, the better you get.
Would you say that your experience in jiu-jitsu assisted your ability to stay calm in law enforcement?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I've been in some really bad situations to where people could have been shot. I could have been shot, but it was my skills from jiu-jitsu that kept me alive and kept me and my partners alive and even kept that person alive. So, it's so funny, like thinking back to the, I want to say mid 2000s, early 2000s or so, jiu-jitsu wasn't popular in law enforcement. Like there wasn't this big craze like there is now. It was still kind of this, taboo-ish type thing. And then it was like a fight club type deal. And everybody looked at us like weird because, oh, you're just rolling around with guys. I'm like, yeah, let me show you how well I do that, So, but, it's good to see how much it's changed. It's good to see how the popularity has grown. I've been saying the same thing for years. I'm like, every cop should learn how to do jiu-jitsu, period. And like I said, it carried me through. I was only a blue and a purple belt when I was still in patrol. But I even at that level, I was really proficient with my skill set.
Yeah, my friend Jen, shout out to Jen, who is that short Filipina girl I mentioned that does jiu-jitsu, and she has a black belt.
Nice.
She says if she ever has a daughter, her daughter is not going to date anyone until her daughter learns jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
They actually really put into perspective for me because that's probably the most uncompromising position or most compromising position for a woman to be in. Yeah, and to learn how to get out of that. She's like jiu-jitsu for a woman is way more practical than say taekwondo is.
Yeah, 100%. And this is what I tell people. Obviously, I have a bias. It's my sport. It's what I love to do. It's what I've been doing. I'll never stop doing it. But I always tell people, go learn something. If Taekwondo is your thing, dude, keep doing it, or go learn Muay Thai, go learn how to box, go learn Krav Maga, go learn something that you can actually use for your job and keep that in your back pocket as a life skill. And it just, in my opinion, again, jiu-jitsu has been the most realistic thing to use, because it looks terrible if I'm sitting there and I'm throwing hands with somebody, or I'm throwing a kick at their head, or like everybody's walking by and they're doing this with their phone. So at this day and age, you definitely don't want to be like looking like, throwing hands like Mike Tyson, and but it's just not something that looks good. So
yeah, the optics of that, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you mentioned BJJ wasn't always around, or wasn't always accessible for law enforcement. But you also train law enforcement nowadays in BJJ. So what are the things that you guys exchange with?
Well, it's definitely grown over the years. Like I said, now that we're on our 10th year in my school now, so it's really cool that I actually can house these guys and gals in my place and train them. So I take jiu-jitsu and I look at it in a couple of different ways. Obviously, there's the sporting competitive side, and then there's the real world self-defense type. And that's what I like to show, use, and teach to law enforcement, is that more real world type stuff that can carry over into their patrol duties, or if we're in the jail and in those type of facilities. But don't get me wrong, a sport jiu-jitsu guy can handle themselves very well in the street. I've competed my whole life in jiu-jitsu. I've been at the highest levels, and I'm very confident if I'm walking around and having to deal with anybody if the situation arose. So. But again, as far as law enforcement, I think you have to teach it a little bit different, and not necessarily like water it down or dumb it down in any kind of way, but just based on scenarios of what officers go through in the day-to-day, that type of situation, knowing how to use your hands, use your body efficiently and effectively to get somebody to the ground, control them, and not allow for any other bad stuff to happen.
So before jiu-jitsu was introduced, what was law enforcement using for de-escalation techniques in those situations?
Oh,
what are those techniques, and then where did it get derived from?
Well, I know that obviously jiu-jitsu has been around for a long time, so I know some of the stuff they've been using did derive from jiu-jitsu, some from judo, even wrestling, even. But who knows? I mean, as the police officer standards and training post, as it's called, they have their own set curriculum of what each person is supposed to learn when coming out of the police academy, or while they're in the police academy. And even so much to where once they get into their departments, are those movements that you use post-certified? Are they post-approved? Is it approved by your department, which 9 times out of 10 definitely coincides with whatever post says is good, the department says is good. So it's a mix. Because I remember, because obviously cuffing people, that's its own type of different techniques. But in jiu-jitsu, it's a lot of hand fighting and learning how to use your hands in different kinds of ways. And so I took things that I already knew how to do movement-wise and applied it to what I was doing day to day on patrol. But don't get me wrong, and I always tell this to recruits now that are going to the academy or while they're in the academy, it's like, hey, go learn what you're supposed to learn to pass. Go learn what you're supposed to learn for the study, for the area that you're going to be tested on, so you can get out and become an officer. And then hopefully you can help use whatever skill set you have within you in your departments. And that's where some people get jumbled up too. They're like, "Oh, I think." Well, okay, it doesn't matter what you think, because it matters what the law says that you can do, and this is what you're supposed to do as per your training and your certifications while you're being as a trained recruit. So, get out there and always learn something. And like I said, even when I was in the academy as a recruit, I was still training jiu-jitsu every day. So it's something that I felt like I knew this was going to come up. Matter of fact, I remember that they call it the in the red man suit. If you watch, if you pull up on YouTube videos and law enforcement training, red man suit, it's normally one of the recruits basically fighting the dude in this big giant suit, and they have a baton, and it's a free for all for about a minute and a half. It's exhausting because they make you run and they make you do all kinds of bag hitting and all kinds of different.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, there's a bunch of it. Yeah, there's a bunch of it on YouTube. You can definitely pull it up and find a lot of it. But they want to see that you're number one, not going to quit. And that's the biggest thing. You're going to get involved in situations where it's probably not always going to go your way. It's going to get ugly. It's going to get messy. You might get hurt. Another person might get hurt. Who knows? But they want to see that you're not going to quit.
Yeah. So let's rewind back into 2020 as a civilian and also a former law enforcement. Mm-hmm. How did you process or perceive all that happened in 2020 regarding one side saw the riots, and then the other side is the pushback against police. Yeah.
Well, what's crazy? It's that obviously the media has a huge handle in what people hear, see, and view. The pushback against police has been going on. It's been going on for decades, even when I was an officer. The Defund the Police, that's been going on. That's something that officers have been dealing with for as far back as I can remember.
Oh, really?
And officers and departments especially, have been understaffed for years, primarily because of reasons being defund the police. But how ironic is that these same people that won't want to fund these programs or fund the departments are the same ones that want the armed security, that want the police officers there when they themselves need assistance in the public eye, right? You watch any type of public figure, be it a politician or whoever, if they're standing on a podium in a city, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be at least a dozen officers around that person, period. That's just how it works. But yeah, this pushback against police, it's nothing new. And I've seen it. And that's part of the reason why it's funny we were talking about the whole, police training and everything. There's a reason why officers aren't trained as well as they should be because of lack of funding. And that all comes from right back to the city managers of what and how much money they want to give to these departments to not only get officers, but train their officers. So it's been going on a long time.
Yeah. So what about all the criticisms of the police, though? Especially from certain communities.
Well, again, I worked in the city of San Pablo and the Richmond area, and it's very not when we weren't the favorite people in the community, that's for sure. So looking at how 2020 went down, it was things we were already dealing with on a day-to-day. There was nothing worse than having to go give service to somebody that called for police service, and at the end of it, they tell you to F off. It's like, you're welcome, have a good day, and that's how you were. You drive by, you got kids giving us the middle finger. We drive by, you got old ladies telling us to screw you. Like, it's just, again, the picture that was painted has been set by the media long ago as to us being the bad people. But it's like, can you imagine if there was no level of law enforcement or no level of any type of protective service in the area? The lawlessness would be ridiculous. And there's a lot of areas that are like that. And that's what's unfortunate. Like Oakland's gone upside down, especially these past couple of years since 2020. It was already bad. It was bad prior to that. But, all these areas. But I saw a lot of the same things going on in 2020 that I was dealing with when I was a police officer. And again, it just wasn't highlighted, right? No one was talking about it as much. And none of it was an issue as much, even though whatever area you were working in, where I was working, it was predominantly Hispanic and African American. And, it was a mixed review of, oh, the police are here. Okay, cool. Now we can get some help. Or, damn it, the police are here. We don't want to deal with them. That's still going on. Nothing's changed. And you have to also think, though, like, how these officers are trained by their departments also falls back again on these community leaders and the city management and government officials that allow them to get the proper training to carry out their duties in a more efficient and effective manners to where people actually like what they're doing. So it's all about education, right? And like, if I throw somebody out there, for instance, like in jiu-jitsu, right? If I took one of my brand new white belts and say, hey, you're going to go compete at the World Championships today, they're probably going to crap themselves and go, what? Let's go do it. Why would I do that? They're untrained. They're not prepared. The same thing can be said for law enforcement. If you put somebody in a setting, in a certain situation where they don't have the proper training or they're not completely qualified just yet, Why would you do that, right? Why would you throw them in that situation? And it's up to the departments to, again, provide that training, provide that extra education for the officer. But again, it's not the department's fault always. It goes back to the city officials.
Yeah, so I think the sweet spot might be to fund the police, but somehow minimize the criticisms, right? Like I've actually had a guest that was previously on here that got pulled over for being profiled by the police, and he is African American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, what's been your experience about like how does the police itself?
Well, here's what's funny. I've heard that word over and over and over again, and I've worked in areas such as the west end of Contra Costa, which is a heavy area. I've worked a heavy crime area. I've worked here in the Pittsburgh area. I've worked in Walnut Creek. I've worked in Danville. I've worked in San Ramon. All these areas that have far different people in their community, right? The word profile is used and abused, and it stems from the media. Anytime you are pulled over, it has nothing to do with who is sitting in the car. Did you violate the law? Right? Just like I told you, I'm kind of trained and it's ingrained in my head to kind of like, as I'm driving around, I'm looking for probable cause why I could stop a vehicle. Who is violating the law, right? If I have probable cause, that is why I'm stopping you. And I don't know what that person's experience was, but I know how I was trained. It's, hi, my name is Officer Pangelinan. The reason why I stopped you is blank, blank, blank. Right? To advise them, hey, it has nothing to do with who you are in the car. Because trust me, I have pulled over everything from African American men, Hispanic men, white women, black women, Asian women, you name it. I've heard all the complaints in the past. When it comes back down to it, this is why I pulled you over. You had no license plate on your vehicle. You had no side view mirror. You weren't using your blinker. Those are the reasons why they're pulled over. So the word profile, I don't take that as something that carries a lot of weight, because again, if you are looking at certain communities, such as the west end of Contra Costa, like I just explained, mostly African American, mostly Hispanic, it's gonna seem bad that I'm pulling anybody over, no matter what. It could be white, it could be black, it could be Hispanic, it could be Asian, doesn't matter. But how they perceive it because they're getting pulled over, well, I hate to tell you, but out of 200,000 people in this city, there's 150,000 Hispanic men. That's probably going to be one of the people I'm going to pull over. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's just a probability.
Yeah, it's by numbers, right? Like I remember being in San Ramon and in Danville, I pull over a bunch of white guys. It just that's where it was at. So again, the profiling thing, and this is where people, they've always like, ever since the 2020 thing, I know my rights, right? We've heard people scream and holler that. I know my rights. That's great. You should. Everybody should, right? Everybody should know their rights. But do you know the law, right? Do you understand and know the law? Certain things you can and cannot do, right? And that's not set by the police. That's set by the land. That's set by the government. That's set by people higher than the police. So we're carrying out these laws that were set by these people that were put into public office by those same voters that were complaining about the police. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. So you brought a lot of interesting points. One is, what do you think, or why do you think that media does what it does in regards to the narrative around police? And second is, even though you don't profile, but do you think there's other police officers out there that do profile and kind of abuse their positions? Yeah,
there's a bad egg in every situation, right? Yeah. There's somebody that doesn't go with the grain in every type of instance, right? I've worked in other facets of vocations and whatnot. I remember working for the federal government, when I got out of college. I'm like, God, that guy's a jerk. You can see who's the bad egg, right? And those that are kind of abusing power, I've seen it done. I've seen it done many times by people in my department and other departments and whatnot. And you see it obviously focused and highlighted by the media because See, there's the bad cop. He's doing this, he's doing that, right? If that person is not being handled, or I guess you even say punished by their superiors, then that falls back on their department. Then they should be handling that type of situation. I've been in situations too where I was reprimanded. It's like, it happens. You make a mistake. We're all human. We're going to make errors, but do we correct that error, right? The biggest way to correct a mistake is change behaviors. If that person keeps doing the same behaviors, that's a personal thing then. Maybe that person shouldn't work there anymore. So, I see a lot of these things that have been happening in the media with, again, police officers having, behaviors unbecoming of an officer. They shouldn't work there anymore, period. That shouldn't be smoothed over, edged out, washed, thrown under the rug. No, that person shouldn't work there because there's a certain etiquette to it, right? So you got to think that person should be dealt with properly.
What about the narrative around the media? Like what's been your insider experience?
It's been nothing but bad, obviously. Just about every local news will want to tear us apart. They want to look at us in a bad light and say, oh yeah, they're just there for that. But it's very rare that you see the good that we did in the community, right? I took care of a lot of business when I was on patrol. I handled a lot of people. I got into fights. I threw people in jail. I got pushed around. I've been hit, you name it. But I did a lot of good in the community, and it's unfortunate that these news media, they want to highlight those bad behaviors because obviously we are looked at with a certain type of, status, and that we should maintain that. But we're just like anybody else. We make mistakes. We have bad days. Things can happen. So, as far as the media goes, it's funny because when I was working, I hardly ever paid attention to him. I couldn't, we saw the media in and around the city here and there, and they always want to hey, officer, I have a question for you. Have a good day. It's just not something I need to deal with. But, it's never going to get better. People want this whole clickbait, get people to get, views and, and people talking about, oh yeah, they said this and this agency this news channel covered this. I saw it, and then all of a sudden it spreads like wildfire. So what can you do?
Yeah, I think there's a certain sentiment that the law isn't meant for everybody.
No,
meaning I'm going to speak broadly, but I'm sure there's exceptions everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But there's a certain general consensus nowadays that the law is not really for me, right? Or the law is made to keep me down, while the rich people are just scoffing free by,
Yeah. Well, even that, I've put to jail people that had higher status than me. I've seen people, go to jail. Like, wow, didn't expect that. But, no one's above it. I've seen people of high status get DUIs, men and women, to where it's like, wow, I didn't know that person was like that, but those aren't things you always see highlighted in the news, right? Because they want to keep certain people that are normally the good people out of that type of limelight. So whatever. I mean, again, it's difficult to call because you never know what you're going to get. They always want to highlight whatever's bad first. They never want to share whatever the officer's doing good. And I've seen bad officers, I've seen bad situations, but majority of my career, it wasn't bad at all. It was great. It was great things, as far as keeping the community safe and putting people to jail, but at the same time, making changes in the community.
Yeah. So as far as changes, how do you think law enforcement could build trust within the community?
There, and I've seen it over the years, and I think it's gotten better. Bridging the gap between the two with programs such as, community outreaches, interactions as far as events. You see a lot of these little festivals and carnivals, and you have the officers getting involved and doing stuff with the public. These 5K runs, these 10K runs, even these bicycle races and whatnot. The officers are getting in with the public, and it takes a lot. And as long as the agencies are trying to do something to bridge the gap, I think it's great. A lot of community cleanups are always great. I think those serve well. That helps the people see like, wow, these officers have to deal with this kind of stuff, you know? And that's the thing. It's like we're dealing with things that the normal people is not supposed to deal with, right? Matter of fact, it's funny because I saw there's a former officer out there. He's trying to make it a reality show, I think, of putting people in officers' shoes, basically. So getting these day-to-dayers, hey, you come do these scenario type-based training. You have all the equipment as an officer. Show me how you would handle it, right? And one of premier activists was put in a situation, and this was in like Texas or something like that. And it was I believe it was a domestic violence type call or whatever. And the activist person shot the people like over and multiple times. It was just like, whoa, what are you doing? And they asked him like, well, what happened there? And he's just like, wow, it's just like, it was a lot going on. You know, they got people talking to me, people yelling at me, someone wanting to come and like attack me. And then I'm supposed to de-escalate this whole situation. And someone threatened to hurt me. The best thing I could do is protect myself. I was like, I was like, wow, protect yourself. Interesting. What an interesting concept. You know, what do you think these men and women are having to deal with day in and day out? Are they going to make a mistake? Absolutely. And I was watching a lot of these videos that were being posted. I was like, God, every single person that either badmouthed or said, you know, I could do that job or whatever, they shot every single person, you know? And it's like, again, what would you do? Do you know how to handle it? Is your training there, right? As you said, it's not for everybody. And, you know, I've seen people get into the line of work and quit immediately.
I guess back to the whole defund the police thing. Since it's been going on for such a long time, if the movement were to flip flop, right, or to be enact, where would the money be taken out of typically?
Well, that all comes. I mean, it comes down to where these city officials say how much budget can we allow these departments to not only give to get more people in the door, because every agency has been down for years and years and years, and this is every agency is short staffed. So on top of getting people in the door, how much training can we offer as far as extra, right? And that can vary. So where it comes from, I don't know. I mean, you know, you see certain things in the community, like, why do we have this? Like, I remember driving around, where was it? Oh, I was on my way to the city, and, you know, getting on the Bay Bridge. It's like, why do we have palm trees on the Bay Bridge? Like, what? You mean we use our tax dollars to pay for something like that? Whereas, like, you got people in these areas that are just downright bad, and it's like they could use the money in better ways. So
yeah, those palm trees are probably, I'm guessing, huge palm trees, and they're probably expensive. Those probably at least $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per tree.
Easy. Yeah. But, you know, you got to look at it like the materials. That's one thing. And then the guys that went over and put them in, there's labor. So it's like, Jesus Christ, this is multi-million-dollar projects right there.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy that palm trees are so prevalent in California. Someone fact checked me on this, but I believe palm trees are not native to California.
Not at all.
So someone brought them here.
Not at all.
And now it's palm trees pretty much colonized California.
Yeah, pretty much. Especially Southern Cal.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. So what are your thoughts on the recent, I believe in certain places, such as maybe Oakland and San Francisco, it's no longer a felony to commit theft up to $1,000?
Yeah. This has been, again, going on since about 2020, I'd say. And these people that just seem to want to riot, if you will, at times with groups of individuals. This even happened at Sun Valley Mall not long ago. And they were looting and rioting and stealing from all these places, and nothing's happening. It's like, what are you to do? But again, the citizens that are working there, their hands off. You got some people that are actually trying to like do something about it and stop them at the door. The security's trying to do something to, you know, stop them from doing this. But the police are going to be slow to respond because, like, hey, even if we catch them, there's nothing we can do. We got to let them go. Even if we do arrest them, they're not going to be prosecuted. The DA is just going to go, nope, not this one. You know, that's been going on. And it's pretty disgusting to see. This happened recently. You know, it's funny. It's even more than like what we just saw In-N-Out getting closed in San Francisco, or in Oakland.
Yeah,
because of thefts, because of robberies and thefts. That is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible that a business like that, where people want to go and eat and have a good time and spend with their families, that can't even stay open because of reasons like that. I saw a video that just popped up. These people came to like rob the person getting your order that stands out of the line. It's like, this poor kid's just trying to do his job. He's probably like 16 years old, and they're, you know, asking for his wallet. It's like, come on, man. But again, they're not doing anything. The DAs aren't doing it, especially in California. And the DAs in California don't want to file anything on any type of these thefts.
Is it political, or where? Like,
it's political. It's it's a complete political thing. It's, again, it comes down to who are we hiring to put in position, right? So when people actually go out to vote, do they know who they're voting for? Is it like, oh, I think it's because my grandma said this is the better side that we want to, okay. That's good about you think your grandma, you know, whatever, but are you reading the fine print? This person wants these type of things to happen. So those are the fine print that you should start reading into as far as who you're voting for, right? Has nothing to do with actual political parties. However you align yourself, it's all about who is actually doing the job, right? Who's actually making the change? Who is making this place a better place? So, and as you see, these past couple of years with all these, you know, DAs not filing on thefts and even homicides.
Homicides, really?
Homicides, yes. A friend of mine, not his daughter, but his son was murdered in Dublin. And those guys got off scot-free. Like, it's like the kid was stabbed to death. Like, you know, how can you condone that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And like these families that are still having to live with these type of grief, it's like, wow, man, like, can you imagine? You can't even rely on public officials or these hired people that are put into office to carry out the law where it should be. But hey, so.
Well, so like, why did that murderer get away with it? Considering that it's still illegal to murder someone.
Clearly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I read just the fine prints of what, you know, things are being said. I'm friends with the dad. I'm friends with this the daughter. And they were just like, well, you know, there was nothing that the DA that really wanted to do, because one of them was a juvenile. So I don't know. However that worked out while they're in court, it's hard to say because you have to be there, like in a court setting, to hear and what's being said and what's going on, what the you know, the prosecution's trying to actually do, and what the the public defender is actually saying. Who knows? And whatever judge is sitting there, that can, you know, fall heavy sway in what's going to happen. So who knows? And it's just sad to see.
Yeah, this whole thing has gotten out of control. From my perspective, even whenever I just drive into Oakland or San Francisco, my complete mental change like shifts.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I enter Oakland or San Francisco,
Right.
I think, oh, yeah, what's visible in my car?
Yeah.
Is my car going to get jacked
Right.
today? Is my car going to get bashed? You know,
And
it doesn't matter where I go. I always have that thought in the back of my head.
But that's good that at least you're cognizant of that, you know, but it's sad that it's like that. I used to enjoy going to those areas. I used to enjoy, like, hey, let's go here, let's go there. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to, because I know what are those repercussions, like what we talked about before. Like, I'm not going to go in certain areas to put myself in certain situations, especially if I know I can do a lot of damage myself, right? I don't want to go and get caught in any kind of situation that's going to possibly get me in trouble too. So I don't know. I just see it as it's really unfortunate that these cities that we once enjoyed have now come to that, to where we're like, I don't want to go there. So
Let's talk about de-escalation techniques again, right? Something I'm curious about. I'm asking generally. So I've seen videos where a police officer has like a knee on someone's head, you know, and then they're being arrested, they're being handcuffed in some ways. Is that just normal, or was that part of a certain?
Well, when it comes to actually arrest and control, and somebody is proned out, as we say, on their stomach,
Yeah.
and you're trying to control them, the head, arms, and shoulders are the hardest to deal with, right? So wherever the head is going, the body can follow, as they say. That's very true when it comes to trying to contain somebody that's fighting back. And once you are able to get those arms behind them, I don't think there's any need or practicality in regards to putting any type of unnecessary pressure in certain areas, neck, head, shoulders. You don't have to. The way I teach, it's normally right around the shoulder blades to the elbow. So I'm attacking the joints, not something like the head, not, soft tissue in any kind of way. So to me, control of the joints takes care of a lot of arrest issues that people have. So I don't know. Everybody's trained different. But again, the knee on the head or the knee on the neck, it happens when people move in transition. I could see that happening when they're trying to move in and around somebody. But is it necessary? No, I don't think it's necessary.
If we were to go in the opposite direction of defund the police, meaning refund the police, right, or having more financial support, what do you think would be the best places to put that funding?
I think in getting qualified persons to be in the job. It's so difficult to get people in the door to not only want to be a police officer, but then once they get there, are they qualified enough? Do they have like the know-how? Are they going to be able to handle being one? Are they going to want to do this job day in and day out? Right? It's just one of those things where like, are the best qualified people getting put into positions to where they can be police officers? So I've seen people in the uniform like, how did you make it? It's like, wow. But,
is that because we need more police officers? So certain people are just being accepted just from a numbers perspective?
I don't know, maybe. But again, it definitely comes down to can they get through, and people pass the police academy, people pass these certain levels to get in there. And once they do, you'll see who can actually handle it. And, the departments sometimes are pretty good about, all right, this is probably not going to be a good fit. Like I've seen officers get let go because it didn't work out, because they couldn't handle how the job is actually done. And the type of personality fit didn't go along well with what the job calls for. So it's just hard to say, but I'd say trying to get the right personnel in the door.
Considering that public opinion of police officers are at what seems like an all-time low, do you think that adds to the anxiety and stress of the job?
Yeah.
And also, how much do police officers make upon graduating from police academy, especially in the Bay Area?
First question in regards to, does it create a lot of stress? And yeah, absolutely, 100%. You see everything that is highlighted in the media, right? No one wants to be that next person in the media limelight, right? No one wants to be like, oh, you're that officer. Oh, you're that guy. No one wants to be that person. So there's a certain stress level there for sure. But, is it something that you have to carry around and deal with? Unfortunately, yeah, and at the same time, carry out your duties and do what you're told. It's just part of the job. It was there when I was there, and it's still going to be there no matter what. So it's difficult for an officer to shake those things as far as those day-to-day stresses, but it's a balancing act of, can you manage your emotion and handle your job at the same time? So, yeah. But as far as what an officer makes income-wise, it varies. Most of them these days are in the six-figure income right at the police academy, which with cost of living here in California, it's not much. It's still.
Yeah, six figures when I was younger or a little kid, I thought six figures was huge. Like you made it. Like,
yeah, you're astronomical, right? You've made it. You're gonna be a millionaire. No, you're not. No, not at all.
Yeah, I looked up the what's the minimum requirement to be a single parent in the Bay Area. It's $154K a year.
Oh, easy. That's wild, but that's true. That's true. And God, I remember my son's 22 now. So I remember, raising him. I was like, oh my God, there's this, there's that, there's this. There's always something. And, you see how and why our parents were stressed. Like, okay, now I get it, But yeah, it's super expensive. So, you got to think a brand new officer coming in, six figures, great. Let it be. If anything, you should have more. But what's great is that a lot of these agencies, such as San Francisco PD, I think Santa Clara, BART, they got huge raises, and as rightfully so. You work in these bad areas that require a lot of you, and there's got to be some sort of compensation for something, right? Like, how are you going to pay these people? Like, trust me, I'm a big believer that even teachers should make way more than they should. They should be right up there with police officers, if not more. Why not? They're teaching our children these things. They're teaching our children day-to-day, education. Like, they're out of our hands at a certain point. They should be making more. Here we are with public safety people. They're running towards gunfire. They're running towards the fire. They're running towards the flood. Or everybody's going the other way. Don't you think these people should be taken care of in some sort of way? Probably, right? But it's even now. That's why I was saying, like, it's even hard for people to get in the door at some of these agencies, and that's why these agencies have hiring incentives. Like one agency in the Bay Area has like a $75,000 hiring incentive.
What does that mean? A bonus?
Yeah, it's a hiring bonus. So should you get hired, obviously you'll start making money. And once you pass, I believe it's their probationary period, which is normally a year, then you'll get your $75K bonus. But that's huge. I remember there was one in SoCal, might have been Whittier PD or something like that. One of the incentives was the department will help you buy a house, like, immediately. It's like, that's pretty awesome. It's difficult at this day and age for any type of income to buy a house, let alone in Southern California. Sweet. I'm sure any young person's going to want, or a person with a family, hey, I want that. I want to go do that. But that's how hard it is for these agencies to get people in the door. They have to create more of an incentive to want to go there. So,
do you think there could be other incentives to get more qualified police officers?
Maybe. It's hard to say.
Because you mentioned, like, there's a lot of people that or some people that don't make it through, but they're not really meant to be there.
Yeah.
And so, in your eyes, what are some of the nitty gritty that someone needs to have in order to be an ideal police officer?
Well, I think as far as an ideal candidate, it's going to be obviously some sort of good level of education. They got to have education. Can tell you that at least this person has some sort of level of discipline that can handle, the rigors of getting themselves through to pass something such as, a degree or whatever. But also it becomes a balance of, all right, can this person handle certain physical aspects of the job, right? Like some of the most minimum requirements are, can you pick up, 10 pounds over your head, or can you drag a 60-pound dummy, 20 yards or something like that. It's like, not everybody can do that, I remember we had a recruit when I was a training officer in the police academy. We had a recruit. The guy couldn't even do a single sit-up.
Really?
Not one. And I never forget. I was like trying to keep a straight face and stay disciplined, but I'm turning around because I want to laugh so hard. I'm like, how did you make it this far in life, right? It's like, wow, not a single sit-up could be done that day. He ended up doing well and he passed, and he's an officer, but it was just like, oh my God, how did you make it this far in life? But that goes to show, like, the certain type of candidates that are out there that are applying, it ranges from the most unreliable physical type person. Maybe he looks good on paper, right? As soon as you get him in the door, you're like, whoa, you just catfished the hell out of me. It's just not the same as what I saw on paper. So again, it becomes down to even the interview process. All right, this person looks good. They can probably handle this. Let's see how this works out. So,
what made you want to leave law enforcement?
I got out in the end of 2009. I was trying to transition over to another department, and it was like right in the midst of the recession, and it was really bad then. And I never forget, like, I'm trying to get into one department, and I had already resigned from my older department, and like they're like, we don't have any more funding. And we're like, great. So I spent the next couple years applying with every agency in the Bay Area. I was like the number 1, number 2, number 3 guy on every agency's list all across the Bay. And it was the same thing. Oh, sorry, we don't have money. Sorry, we don't have money. We could hire you, but it's going to take a little while, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what can you do, right? I got mouths to feed. I'm trying to do my thing and stay afloat. And here I am, riding on money that I'd saved from when I was an officer already, which I was making good money. I was working a lot of overtime, but I'm like, wow, it was a huge change. And And then it just got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should at least go to my fallback career, which is martial arts and physical fitness type stuff. And like, all right, cool, I can do this.
So what was that? What gave you the nudge to open Saber?
Yeah, it was right place at right time. I got my black belt in 2012 and had already aspirations of wanting to open up an academy. I had kind of reached my limit of applying to agencies at that point. From 2009, end of 2009, 2012, 2013, I was still applying because all my my certifications were still valid. So I was like, all right, I'm going to keep applying until maybe someone will hire me. And then 2014 rolled around, and a friend of mine who owned a CrossFit gym at the north end of Concord was like, hey, man, we got a space. It's already has mats in it, you know, maybe you can get started here. I was like, this is probably a situation and an opportunity that I should jump all over. And again, right place at right time. And I jumped all over it. And I started out right when I opened my academy with 30 students. So it was like, all right, cool, I can pay the rent, you know? That's all I cared about. Is I should pay rent, we'll see how this works out. And end of my first year, I had 100 students. So I was like, you know, we need to grow, because it was like maybe 800 square feet of mat area, really small, like a shoebox. But it was great for what I was like, oh, cool. This is like the coolest man cave ever, you know? I'm going to make the best of this, right? And then we grew. And then I had another friend who owned another CrossFit gym towards Pleasant Hillside. And he's like, hey, I got 1,500 square feet. If you want to sublease out of there. I was all, that's bigger, that's better, I'll take it. So took my mats and we went over there. We set up shop, and first year we had 100. By the end of my second year, I had 200 students. So I was like, this is like, if everybody came at one time, I'd be screwed. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm like, all right, well,
That's a great problem to have.
Yeah, right. I thought to myself, wow, I didn't plan for this. You know, again, I'm a poli-sci major. I'm a police officer. These are things that I was doing. I'm not a business guy. I don't know, you know. So I'm learning as I go. And then another good friend of mine, who was another black belt, who was training at a gym with a team that was in Concord. And he's like, hey, you know, our team's going to close up this place. The owners and the black belts here, they want to move back to Brazil. They want to sell everything. Mats that are already here, like, this can be all yours. Do you want it? And I was all, say less. Went right down there, took a look around. It was 3,000 square feet. And I was like, and it was a standalone. So meaning I didn't have to share space with anybody, because my first two places I was inside a CrossFit gym. You know, it was loud. You can hear, you know, bars.
Distractions, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of distraction. Now I was by myself. I was like, oh, this is the dream right here. Took it. And right after the first year, and even up to now, we have well over 300 students.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So we're 10 years in. We have over 300 students and 7 affiliate gyms in the Bay Area.
What's your experience with racism in and out of the force?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there. It's, you know, I'm not one to say or ignore it that it's not there, but it's totally there. On the job, for sure. It's funny because it was something I always heard when I was working in the West Side. Like, oh, you're racist. You're racist. And I would be like, I'd always ask whoever was trying to project that on me. I'm like, what do I look like to you? And they like look at me again like, oh, you're not one of them white boys. No, I'm not white. I'm not black. I'm neither. So for you to like say these kind of things, it's like, wow, okay, that's kind of a far fetch. But at the same time, you know, I understood where they were coming from, and I understood, you know, the things that they were dealing with, because even me growing up, I saw it, you know, I dealt with it, but I never gave it that type of attention to where it needed to be like highlighted, whether what I am ethnically and what these other people were. So for me to carry out my job, I need to like look past all these things and say, I'm stopping you because of this reason. I'm arresting you for this reason, because you broke the law. It has nothing to do with who you are. It is what you did. So I think, especially in certain areas, I'm sure it's even more prevalent, but you know, it's how you handle yourself, how you talk to people, Because trust me, like, when I was a rookie cop, I didn't get the respect right away from people in my community because they said, oh, there's another rookie guy or whatever. But then it's how you dealt with the public, right? How you spoke to them, how you deliver your message, and how you're able to help them. And they can see, oh, wow, Officer Pangelinan's here. He's here to help. That's what I wanted to instill in the people in the community. And that's what I feel like I walked away with, like I wasn't that cop to where I was like, oh, he's an asshole or whatever. He was a good guy. He helped us out. He did a lot of good things for the community. That's what I wanted to take away.
I've always wanted to ask a police officer this. Is there actually a quota at the end of the month?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. What?
Yeah,
what,
so I don't know how that idea got spread, but
I've heard that as far back when I was a teenager and thinking, trust me, when I was a teen, I was like, oh, police don't like us either. Blah, blah, blah. They want to pull over all us kids because we got fixed up cars and all these things. I'm like, no, because you're breaking the law, right? But as far as quotas, no. What departments want to see is proactivity.
Okay.
They want to see that your officers are handling business efficiently and not just reactive. They're going out there and actually making car stops to find those bad guys, right? They want to make those car stops to stop those people that are breaking the speed limit, all those little things. And a rule of thumb for me when I was working was 3-2-1. 3-2-1 meaning 3 citations a night, 2 vehicle tows a night, and 1 arrest per shift. If I'm doing that, I'm doing my job. If I stick with that activity level, that means I'm getting out there and I'm doing my job. At the end of the night, I would always assess like, oh wow, look at that. I got 10 citations. I got 4 vehicle tows, and I got 3 arrests. That was a great night. Has nothing to do with what you were trying to be looked at as, oh, you met all his quotas. No one ever gave us numbers. There's no department that gives you numbers of what to do. They want to see that you're proactive. And it's a competitive field, just like any other professional field, right? If you and I are both officers and you do nothing every shift other than respond and react, meaning you're not out making those car stops to stop the speeders, to look for dope, to look for guns, to look for the warrants and the bad guys. And you're just taking these, what we call cold calls, right? Stuff that already happened versus me. I'm the one making the stops. I'm the one making the arrests. I'm the one citing and towing these vehicles. And it comes like, hey, guess what? We have an opening for a sergeant position. You are 2 applicants. Please fill this out, right? Maybe you and I both interview well, but when it comes down to, oh, wow, Bryant did all this. Ooh, he didn't do anything. They want to see somebody that can actually produce, right? So same thing can be said in any type of job. If whatever field of line of work that you're in, people want to know that someone's actually making this whole machine work.
Yeah, in the corporate world, they call it key performance metrics or key performance indicators, KPIs.
There it is. That's exactly what we do in law enforcement. So is there actual number or quota that we're told that we're no, 100% no. But we are competitive with each other. We used to do that with my coworkers all the time. And we would tease the ones that weren't doing anything. Like, oh, what did you do tonight? Right? Because there were those officers that didn't want to do anything, that were just there to collect a paycheck. And normally those are the ones on the tail end of their career. They don't want to get in any type of business or trouble or whatever, and they're just there to be there. Are they reliable? Sure. They know their job, but can you rely on them to go be proactive? Nah, probably not.
Yeah, so they're checked out.
They're checked out. But they're there because that's their job.
Yeah. Have you encountered any like cartel level interactions, or
as far as like people on the street?
Yeah, I mean, like the cartels are definitely a big thing, right? So like, have you ever had any experience with them?
Yeah. So in the areas that I was working, there's very prevalent all over the place. And the things that we learned as far as like narcotics training, where these drugs are being smuggled in from, like there's a pipeline and it runs from here to like Central California, and it's pretty extensive, and it's certain cartels that own and run those things, and it feeds drugs to the Bay Area and SoCal, and it all comes, up and down the state that way. And it's crazy, but like on a more of a patrol level where I was at, those are all just your street runners. Those are like the low end of the totem pole type guys. Obviously, you want the bigger fish. You want to go after the distribution level type people. It was there. It was always there, But even at the distribution level, there's someone above him, right? Normally, it wasn't in town. Normally, it wasn't in the area that you're at. But there's always somebody higher up that's calling the shot saying, hey, we need this movement. But yeah, it was there.
Yeah, do you have any personal stories with...
Where I was working, it was more, again, the street level guys. And a lot of gangs that operated in certain ways, certain targets, I got involved in a robbery case with a group that was robbing liquor stores and fast food places. Normally the burger places and whatnot, and the little restaurants that have, money sitting there, And so I remember I was ending my shift, and all my teammates, they were tied up. They were booking people, and the new team was about to come on. So I was the only officer on the street, and it was about maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I always like to do drive-throughs of my area, my beat area, one last time before I go finish. I want to make sure everything looks all right, nothing's out of place. If it's something I can do right then and there, I'll do it. And so I'm doing my final drive-through, and I'm at a stoplight, and I see in the left side there is a vehicle that was on. It was idle. It was on. The lights were on. It was running idle right next to a liquor store. And as I'm still sitting there at the light, I see two individuals run out of the liquor store and jump in the car. And all of a sudden, the hairs in the back of my neck just went up. I was like, oh, that's not good. So did I just on view a robbery? Probably, right? So immediately I called into dispatch over the air. It's like, hey, just advising, I just saw two individuals run out of this liquor store at this location. And they immediately responded back, any unit to cover this, officer? We just got a confirmed armed robbery at this liquor store. So it literally just happened as I was pulling up. So I got that notification, and right away I followed that vehicle. And so we're going through in my beat area, which is primarily residential. And this kid is doing like maybe 60 through a very tall, a very tight street and neighborhood. A lot of these old neighborhoods, I don't know if you've been, they have those very large speed bumps that are long, and it's sort of people don't speed, and they have a big dip in between. Yeah. Because they want you to slow down. And this car was like, it looked like a scene in a movie, right? And in the midst of all this going on, I had to call out my situation, tell them what was going on, tell them the vehicle plate, direction of travel. What have I seen as far as like how many individuals in the car, right? And keep in mind, you're supposed to say all these things under a cool, calm voice like we're talking right now, right? So I'm talking to dispatch. I'm driving the vehicle. I'm going through a neighborhood at a pretty high rate of speed. And then all of a sudden he goes onto a main thoroughfare. And it's like, busy time. It's the weekend. I always worked weekend day shift, and the end of my shift, things would pop off because, it's the weekend. Anyway, there's tons of cars and traffic going, and this dude is weaving, and I'm calling out what I'm seeing, and I'm calling out my speed. That's a department, you have to say those things.
Is there a helicopter involved at this point?
No, because I hadn't asked for one, and if there was one, it would have to be coming from CHP, and who knows how far that was out. So at that point, again, I'm still all alone. I'm still trailing this vehicle. I'm calling out my speeds, how many vehicles are on this road, if there are any pedestrians, and then he decides to go into oncoming lanes. So I start to pull back because I don't want to cause any more panic. And I'm still calling out, and I'm visually watching him. So he's on the oncoming lanes, and he's doing this. He's weaving in and out, again, just like a movie. And then he hits a pole. He hits a one of those newsstands that sell the newspapers, like it's like Squares that sells the newspaper. Yeah, he hit one of those and that went flying. And then he hit a PG&E pole with the one with the big transformer thing on the top of it.
Yeah.
And I'm calling all that out, and these cars are stopping everywhere. And it was the biggest explosion in the air. It went like whoa. And I just told him what happened. The car spun out. All the tires are flat. The airbags are deployed. And it's just right in the middle of the intersection. And I'm at the border of San Pablo, Richmond, and North Richmond. North Richmond is one of the worst crime-ridden areas in all of Contra Costa, probably even the Bay Area. And I'm right there. And I get out of my vehicle, and you're supposed to go out throughout the checklist of your duties. Officer Pangelinan, put your hands in the air. Let me see your hands. Nobody's responding. Right, the vehicle. My car is my cover, so I'm sitting there. Gun is drawn, and I'm by myself, and I see 4 heads just kind of like rolling in there, like this. I'm like, oh man, and I'm constantly like, let me see your hands, and nobody's responding, and I'm hearing chatter behind me get really loud, and it's all the residents in and around, and all those guys that like to hang out at the liquor store at the corner. They're all, fuck you, police, blah, blah. And, they're bad. Anything could have happened behind me. I don't know. I'm sitting there holding my gun drawn on this vehicle. And then finally the cavalry comes, and finally our our canine unit comes, and we get him out. And it was a great arrest. It was the same crew again that robbed and even killed one dude at a drive-through. So yeah, it was a great arrest.
Because we had a drive-through?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they killed the register dude.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
But it was one of those things where it's like, wow, I was the right place at the right time. It was a really high stress, difficult situation. I held my own. I kept my coolness and continued and carried out my job. I could have easily terminated and said, nope, I'm not going to do anything, because they're going in oncoming lanes, which a lot of people do. But I just kept a visual on the vehicle itself, and then it hit the pole, and that did it itself. So they did me that service by taking themselves out. Well, it's crazy because one of my old coworkers, he was in the next shift coming on, and they're in briefing, and every briefing, it takes about 20, 30 minutes, and you're sitting in there with your team, with your sergeant, and your sergeant's telling you, hey, this is what we got going on, blah, blah, blah. And in the room, you can hear the radio traffic, and that's coming from patrol and dispatch. And my buddy Ryan, he was just like, and my nickname was Pang. Pangelinan is my last name, so they would call me Pang. And somebody goes, is Pang chasing somebody? It's like, they're all like, what's going on right now? And then they realize, like, oh shit. And everybody grabbed their stuff, and that's when they realized that where I was at and what I was doing. So yeah, that was a good one.
Well, yeah. How likely are police chases, or at least the way that Hollywood shows what police does? How likely is that? Is that pretty common? Is that
no? Well, it depends on where you work. Yeah. Robbery chases like that, not the most common. Stolen vehicle pursuits, very common. I was involved in a bunch of those, and that would just pop off at any time. And normally it was officers, just tripping plates, as we'd say, in our vehicle. And when you see a cop go up behind a vehicle, normally he's either getting that vehicle plate information to see if it matches the vehicle, right? And if for whatever reason it doesn't, and let's say it's stolen, in our system, it'll come back and alert to you, stolen vehicle. Then it's on, So you got to think, all right, cool, it's time to go. So at any moment in time, we would hear those things, stolen vehicle, like, oh, it's time to go.
So like walking through a day in the life of an officer, like, so you start your shift and then.
Yeah. So again, you arrive about an hour or so before, get dressed, and, you're doing your thing. You go into briefing. And again, a briefing is normally a rundown, kind of like your sergeant quarterbacking what's going to go down for the day or what he wants to see. Give us an update on what the prior shift went through, if there was any incidents that we need to be alerted and to go follow up on certain things. And that's where we also like kind of assess how our day is going to be, because we might have had reports that we didn't finish from the day before. So we're filing papers, we're doing whatnot and everything within the briefing, asking questions to like, hey, Sarge, what do you want me to do? Where do you need me to be? And there were some days where it's like, hey, I just need you guys to be out there, to be in the picture, because being visible is huge. And what's nice, and I've always noticed this anytime I've driven through cities, like, wow, I haven't seen a single cop all day long. I like it when I see them driving by. I like it when I see at least more than one go just, oh, there's one. Oh, there's one. That tells me they're out there, they're being visible, and they're in the public's eye, which is a great thing. So anyway, but after that, you gather your gear and you go out to your vehicle and you have to check everything in your car, make sure the shotgun's working, make sure all your lights are working, make sure all the tires have air, make sure all the lights are working, and make sure there's no debris or anything in your vehicle. So, it's a pretty big, elaborate thing, but it becomes simple because you're like, oh, no, I just do this. Now I just, you've done it so many times. You're like, now I check this, now I check that.
And then do you have free reign to start driving around the city too?
Yeah. From there, once you get all your stuff and your vehicle's cleared, you're good to go. You get in your vehicle and you go start your day. So normally what we would look for on what we call the MDC or MDT, so it just depends on whatever vehicle, like the computer in the vehicle, it'll have what we call the calls for service, the call log, and whatever's pending, right? If someone called the police and requested assistance, normally that is waiting for you in the queue for you to go like, oh, I need to go to this address. You'll notify the dispatch, say, hey, I'll handle that. And you go take care of that call for service. But normally for me, I would start out by driving through my my beat area to make sure everything was okay. And then I would start to go to the calls for service.
Let's talk about mindset, whether it's from law enforcement or from BJJ. How do you build a tough mindset or like a resilient mind?
That takes time. And then I think in jiu-jitsu, you learn a lot about yourself in regards to how you handle situations and how you can control situations, not just physically, but even mentally. Because in jiu-jitsu, it teaches you how to lose. And it's not necessarily just tapping somebody out or getting tapped out. It's like losing certain situations, like learning positions. If I can't win every single position every single time, but if I learn how to take a loss and come back from that loss, now I know what to do for next time. I won't make that error again, right?
So you're saying there's also the psychological component of like,
totally,
you've admitted that you lost this time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that changes people. And some people can't even handle that because they can't handle losing. And you see people that kind of like go into these funks in training because maybe they're so used to winning in other things in their life, right? Whether it be personal or from other sports or just in general, they're not good losers. And you see it a lot. And it's hard to break people of those kind of habits and then behavioral tendencies, because you're like, guess what? You're not the best at everything. Definitely not jiu-jitsu, right? It takes some time. And so I think that was huge as far as mindset wise of creating someone that was able to bounce back and handle, tough situations, tough stress, because here I am getting my limbs cranked on and someone's trying to choke me constantly, but I'm breathing, I'm fighting, I'm still in the fight, and I'm going to come out, I'm going to win, right? So that helps build character in so many different levels. And I think it can help the day-to-day person on law enforcement, because if you're not used to those stresses, right, then you're going to walk around with either a chip on your shoulder or think that you're invincible, when really you're not. You're pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, in talking to you, the vibe I'm getting that law enforcement is a thankless job, mm-hmm. where you're trying to protect the public, but the public is like, F you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's sad. I remember doing a death notification to a family.
Oh, no.
And this young man, he took his own life, and I had to tell the mom. The week prior, the mom called the police to make a complaint, and I was the same officer. So a week prior, I'm going to this lady's house, and she's dropping F-bombs on me, telling me I'm an asshole and all these things. I'm like, oh, God. Yes, ma'am. What do you need me to do? I'm here to help. well, you're not here to help him, blah, blah, blah. All these type of complaints. How can I help you? What can I do? Right? Did my best, was able to leave. She was somewhat satisfied. And then here I am a week later letting her know that her son just passed. And now she's crying in my arms, and I'm supposed to be at least some sort of like sympathetic to that, which I was, like, hey, that's tough. But it's like, here you are again with that. You never know what's going to happen, right? And how you're going to deal with the public and how these people, because again, they're just people too. You have to kind of put yourself in that situation. Like, they got emotions just like you and me. I need to like bring myself down to that level sometimes.
What happened for you to be the person that told her about her son?
What happened to her? What do you mean?
Yeah, like you were informing her about her son, right? Did her son commit suicide in a public space, or was that?
No, just in his home.
Okay.
And he lived in the area.
Okay.
And we had dealt with him before in other situations.
How did you guys know to find him or to look for him?
Well, we had gotten a call from his mom and some friends saying, we haven't seen him in a couple of days. Can you guys go check on him? Yeah, cool. My partner and I, we went and did a welfare check, as they call it. And the door was propped open a little bit. It's like, oh, okay. It seemed like he had just been in and out of the house a lot or whatever. And he had a note. He had written a note, what he was going to do with himself. And he was right there in his bed. So, these are, again, things that day-to-day person's not supposed to deal with. So having known who he was and who the caller was for the call for service, like I knew like, all right, I need to go contact his mom. So that was tough.
You guys typically get a lot of welfare calls, or
Yeah.
I think there's also a different one where it's called, I think, 5150 or...
Well, 5150s are completely different. A welfare check is basically, hey, can you go see if someone's okay?
Yeah.
And that can be anything. And that can be, hey, I haven't heard from my friend in a few days. Can you go see if they're all right? Sure, we'll go check that out. Or, if like a place has, we used to do welfare checks at old folks' homes all the time. Because we had families say, hey, I don't think my dad is doing well. He's in there. Can you guys go maybe check him out? He hasn't returned my call. Sure, we'll go check him out. As far as 5150s, those were people that would call. Normally it was a family member saying, hey, he's making threats about himself and to harm himself and others. Can you come talk to him? Sure, we'll go talk to him. And I've done so many of those. Those are tough too. Because, especially when you're trying to take care of a person and they're not all there, and you're really trying to get them in a better place. And you have family, that probably called the police on them and they can't handle it either. So you're looking at people that have reached wit's end on both levels. Someone that's incapable of taking care of themselves and want to hurt themselves or harm themselves or others. And you got a family member that's, I can't even deal with this anymore. Yeah.
Would it be fair to say those situations are beyond the scope of that 6 months training? And then this is just like situations that you got to grow into?
Well, yes and no, because it's introduced to you within that 6 months of your training. And it's actually a tested thing as far as you understanding the health and safety code of 5150 and also what it entails, because you have to run down the line like, hey, man, what is your name? Are you okay? Are you taking any medications? Because sometimes there have been 5150s, quote unquote, that were mistaken because they were actually people that were on the spectrum. Right. Or diabetic even, because even people that are diabetic with low blood sugar or not taking medication can act kind of like 5150-ish, to where they're like incoherent and they're not all there. And they'll say things kind of like that don't make any sense. So you had to learn about certain things of each. I'm not a doctor, but I had to learn. But I knew, even from my own family experience, my dad was diabetic. I knew those signs. So anytime there was a few times where we got called in for 5150, but it was a dude that was low on blood sugar and had a low blood sugar and he needed food and he didn't have his medication. So this guy's about to go into shock, diabetic shock. Like, of course he's not going to respond to you normal. Of course he's going to appear like he's 5150 or crazy, as they would say. But it just, again, it's difficult. It's difficult, but again, you learn those things again back at your police academy training and again on the day-to-day job.
Yeah, all that sounds very, very tough. How do you not take it home with you?
Everybody's different. I was pretty good about that. there were some tough days, seeing certain things and having dealt with certain cases. You're like, oh God, today was a rough day. I'm just gonna go to bed, or I don't want to deal with it, or whatever.
For example, my personality, I definitely know I could never be a police officer or a doctor because I'll take stuff with me,
Right. And that it has nothing to do with people's inability to handle it. It's just how you perceive certain situations and how you kind of like hold them to you, and I hate to say it, but like I was taught at the academy level, from one of my old sergeants, and she taught us kind of like the cold hard truth of things. She's like, I hate to say it, you guys, but it comes to the point where you're stepping over the body and moving on to the next. Because you kind of have to like remove yourself at certain times, detach your emotions certain times to be able to handle the job. Because again, you're looking at things and dealing with things that not everybody's supposed to deal with, right? I've seen people dismembered. I've seen people, decapitated, all kinds of bad stuff. Yeah. And people say certain things to me, like they want to kill me. Like that's not normal, right? That's not normal. But I did pretty well, I could say. It did probably jade me a little bit into where I was like a little cold at certain times because it's tough, you're getting told every day, F you, F you, F you. Thank you, have a good day. And that's your only response you can do, right? But, you just kind of swallow it and just go with it. That's probably why I have martial arts and jiu-jitsu. And I work out quite a bit because I'm like, I need those escapes. I need those releases. And those are my like moments of zen. Like, now I feel good again.
Yeah. Is it pretty common for police officers to have PTSD from the job?
Absolutely. 100%.
How is that typically handled on the force? Is there like a program or is it even talked about, or do police officers just kind of internalize it?
I would say it's getting more talked about now due to suicides happening these days within law enforcement, which
is that rising, or was that new?
It's rising.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's rising. It's just as high, if not higher, than it is for military. Like we lose disabled veterans to PTSD 22 a day. 22 veterans kill themselves every single day.
Oh, really? That's
startling. It's a startling statistic, but it's true.
Yeah, I don't know what the benchmark is, but to me, in my world, that sounds high because that's like one almost every hour.
Mm-hmm. That's basically what it is, and that's nationwide. But as far as law enforcement, there's no definite program that I know of. That's unfortunate because I've had a lot of friends suffer from PTSD from the job, and I wish there was something, and I hope something does come up. I know there's some programs out there that are trying to be created, just like there is for military and disabled vets. There, I work for some of these agencies and corporations and foundations that do stuff for disabled vets, right, for the military. I wish there was one that was the parallel that was for law enforcement, but there's not yet.
Why isn't there one?
I don't know.
Is it a cultural thing where police officers just maybe don't know or don't feel comfortable talking about what they've gone through?
Maybe.
Or you taught to kind of just desensitize yourself talk about it?
I would say some of that is true too. And also it's kind of like
for example, in the Asian culture, Vietnamese culture, right? Talking about mental health is like a very rare thing in a lot of families. Yeah,
same.
It's almost like it's almost like I guess you're saying a word that no one recognizes what's going on.
It's so funny that you say that. Like I'm Pacific Islander, but I'm an 8th Japanese also. So all those same characteristics in your home probably were shared in mine as well. So to talk about emotion, no. And even if you did, you're just being silly, or you're just being too sensitive. It's like, no, my feelings are real and they're valid. And I'm glad that at least at this age, I'm understanding that and recognizing that and seeing like, wow, that was some pretty fucked up shit I went through, But again, we have to look at it like that's where our parents were raised, right? They didn't break that generational cycle. They didn't say, hey, you know what? I don't want to do that to my kid because that's what my mom and my dad did to me. I feel like I've changed some of those things when I was parenting my son growing up. It wasn't perfect, but I did my best to try not to duplicate a lot of the things my parents were doing because that wasn't right. I'm not going to sit there and fault my parents and hate them. But at the same time, I'm like, I'll always let my mom know, like once in a while, hey, remember what you used to do to us? I just laugh my head and shake it, and just like, it is what it is now. But I know not to do that. But yeah, it's probably the same with law enforcement too, with some of these agencies that don't talk about it as much, or it's not out there as much, or just not put on the table as a priority, which probably it definitely needs to be.
Yeah, would you say that part of that maybe is the culture piece? The other one is possibly the financial piece.
Yeah.
Meaning it takes more resources.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So again, here we are with the fund or defund, right? Do these do these departments and agencies have the funding to take care of these officers when they get in shootings? Probably not. Normally, the protocol, you get involved in the shooting. They take away your gun. They take you and your whole team, and they're put into different rooms, and you're questioned. Normally, on a very surface level, are you okay? Do you need somebody? Do you need do you need any help at this moment? Okay, good. We'll be right back with you. We're going to have somebody interview, and they interview everybody to make sure everybody's good. And once that whole situation is cleared, then the officer can be released. But it's almost like it's not check in with the officer to see if they're actually okay, right? It's just a surface thing.
What was your first experience, or one of your first experiences, like dealing with you said you saw someone like dismembered and dead bodies. Like, how did you first deal with all that? Because
it was tough, man. I remember we had it was a crash. The person had those strollers that have the curved handles, like the little old school strollers
for babies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was in the back of their vehicle, and the person they rear-ended somebody. I can't remember if they rear-ended somebody or somebody rear-ended them, but the stroller went flying forward and the handle took it right off. So
the stroller was in the back seat. Mm-hmm. It flew forward and cut the dude's head off. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. And this was like right after Christmas time. And, tough time.
Was there a baby in the car too?
No, just the person, just the driver. Okay. Just the driver was in the car. And, it's unfortunate. But yeah, you look at it and go, this is going to be rough, because as officers, we're there for situation as far as like holding down the scene and preservation of the area, as far as like taking pictures to make sure evidence is in line, and then collection, right? I had dealt with so many times to be the solo officer on a dead body call. And it's just you and the deputy or the coroner that comes and helps you to put him in a bag and get him in the van. And it's difficult. It's difficult. Like, again, you have to desensitize yourself quite a bit. Matter of fact, that the young man that took his own life, the one that I did the death notification to his mom, I had to help load his body into the bag with myself. Mind you, this dude was about 6'10". He was
6'10"? That's a huge guy.
He was huge. And it was me and the deputy from the sheriff's office, who was a little dude and not in the best shape, and my other partner, she was very tiny. And the three of us had to put him in the bag, bring him into the elevator, which he could barely fit, and we had to like get him upright. That's the only way he could fit, and bring him back down so no one could see, away from the public's eye, because there was crowd gathering. Well, what's going on? It was the family. You don't want them to see that, because then they'll freak out and then go into kind of like panic mode. So we had to make sure that was out of their eye and put him in the van so the deputy could take him away. But yeah, so like even in the situation, it wasn't mine, but I saw it, like when that person got decapitated. Like, it wasn't my call, so I didn't have to be the person picking anything up. But yeah, it's difficult either way.
Let's talk about everyone's favorite occupation, lawyers.
Yeah, yeah, right. Jeez.
The one thing I always wonder about lawyers is, let's say your client is someone that's very obviously guilty. How do you handle defending them, right? Obviously, it's part of the job. So as a law enforcement personnel, did you ever get like resistance from lawyers as far as like what their role is in law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because like dealing with lawyers and public defenders all the time. So I always go to the DA's office whenever I was called to court, and to go check in with the DA, let them know I'm there. And they always like gave us kind of like a, hey, this is what's going on. they want to quarterback everything a little bit and let you know, like, hey, the public defender is saying these things. You're probably going to get harassed and all these little things while you're on the stand, and that's fine. But it wasn't uncommon to be heckled or something being said to you at some point, either outside of court or a lot of times in court while you're on the stand. I've testified so many times in cases, and it's just kind of like it's a circus, But you're trying to get a case that you dealt with, handled. And if it made it that far, then you probably did pretty good as far as, your case. So,
yeah. Did you ever see a situation where someone you took in got away because of the legal system?
Not necessarily got away, but probably got a little less than what I thought would happen. That robbery case, those guys went down pretty hard, but not as hard as I thought. And a few other cases I had. And that's what's crazy, like stuff like DUI, right? DUI is like, for some officers, like they hated dealing. I know I hated dealing with it because it's so much paperwork. It's so much paperwork for a misdemeanor. And 9 times out of 10, that misdemeanor gets thrown out the window. And it's like, And, especially when you see these guys that actually did harm, or did property damage to the city or whatever, just whatever. It wasn't good. Clearly, they shouldn't have been behind the wheel. And you're trying to take them to jail, and like, they don't want to file, or they don't want to go forward with it. Like, what? This dude's been pulled over and arrested for DUI like countless times. He's driving on a suspended license. His license has been taken away or whatever, and it still keeps happening. It's like, this is like a repetitive thing. It's like, how can we stop this? This person should be behind bars, clearly. Or maybe some sort of sobriety house where he shouldn't be let out for a while. But it doesn't happen.
Yeah, what's the incentive for not putting them behind bars?
I don't know. Probably save money. Save somebody money. Who knows?
Okay, yeah, because I figured they would make more money.
Well, not the lawyer.
Okay.
See? Lawyer has his own incentive. I need to win this case. So if his person doesn't go to jail, hey, I did my job.
Yeah, I would be curious about, like, if I ever interview a lawyer on here, I'll ask him, how do you handle dealing with someone who who's guilty and defending them?
That's what, especially when dealing with public defenders. Public defenders are probably the lowest of the low when it comes to the justice system. They don't get paid, and if they do, it's hardly much, right? And they take on the worst people as clients. And it's like, God, you're defending this person that clearly broke the law, and you're still trying to be that voice for them to say, "Hey, I think they're innocent." It's like, what? But it happens. It happens.
Yeah. I don't know if I understand, but I'm curious about like what it takes for that to be a thing.
It's a whole other breed of person, I think.
Let's go back to the mindset strategy, right, or topic. What are some key moments that help really define your mental state?
Just staying cool under pressure. I think that also has to deal with, again, my upbringing as far as training. Like, again, I started in wrestling. It's a very hard sport. I was competing at, way back when, and did a lot of it all the time. And then when I got to jiu-jitsu, it was that whole other animal of competing and being in a discipline and learning. And, that really made me know how to keep cool under pressure. So anytime I was involved in situations that call for me to be in a fight or that type of situation, I knew I need to be on and at my best. And at the same time, still go within my duties as far as not breaking any laws myself. It's almost like you need to be perfect, right? You're going in a situation that you could possibly get hurt. Person can get hurt because you don't want anybody to get hurt because that's more paperwork and something you don't want to be liable for. And at the same time, am I sticking within the duties and parameters of my job, right? There's a stress in itself because people overstep that boundary all the time. Either abuse of power or they just didn't know. Like, oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. And they got slapped in the wrist for it, whatever it might be. But yeah, so, I just think the discipline from martial arts and wrestling really carried through in my career.
Yeah, do you do anything on a day-to-day to like maintain a peak state of mind?
Yeah, I'm a creature of habit. I'm all about routines. I wake up between 4:30 and 4:45 every morning. I do my morning stretches. I take out my dogs. I get prepared for the day, and I teach my first morning class. But all within that, like, it's the same things. Take out my dogs, bring them back in, put them back to bed, drink green tea, take my vitamins, get dressed, shower. I'm out the door. Once I get to class, teach class, go through the warm-ups, do all my stuff with their team, and train with them, and then go work out at 24 Hour Fitness, and then go home, eat, rest.
Yeah. Do you follow any particular training modalities or things like ice baths or anything?
No, not really. I'm a big believer though in like the use of like massage and chiropractic. I get worked on every week with deep tissue type stuff.
Is that just for maintenance, or you have a need?
Maintenance and overall mobility. Like I have two bulging discs, upper and lower. So I always have to get adjusted to make sure I'm like in line and my body's functioning. And you know, it feels good to get worked on and have your, little kinks worked on, especially if I'm like doing double days. Sometimes I'll train in the morning and the afternoon, and the afternoon session is normally the harder one. So my body's pretty beat up by the end of the day, and that's probably just, like, you got to look at it like that's just Monday. I still have to do that like for the rest of the week. So by the time I hit Thursday, I'm trash. Like my body is just wrecked. So I'll get adjusted and worked on Tuesday afternoon, and then Friday morning. So I just like to keep that constant thing. But my dietary intake is always the same. My hydration is always the same. Again, I'm just a creature of habit.
And do you do anything different if you're competing versus just?
No, not too much. Because I think if you deviate from certain things, your body will go into shock and not know how to respond, because it's used to certain things. It's used to certain ways of patternization as far as eating, hydration, training, and whatnot. So as soon as you throw it a loop, it's going to go, whoa, what's that? We don't normally do that, or we don't use that. What is this in our system? Like, I don't like to confuse it. So, and this is why, like, if I have to like cut weight or do anything outside of that, I make sure I give myself ample amount of time so my body's not shocked.
Yeah. What are any training techniques or recovery tools?
Again, it all
like for example, particular breathing techniques or particular weightlifting or stretching. Like what do you particularly do?
I do a lot of basic stretches, before I work out and then before jiu-jitsu training. As far as weightlifting goes or resistance training, I do a lot of old school like bodybuilding type stuff. But I keep it simple. Not looking to like break records or make PRs in my workouts these days. It's all about consistency and being functional and mobile. I sit in hot tubs quite a bit just to stretch and release. I love steam rooms and saunas too for recovery, because I think they're great. I don't do the cold thing well. I hate the cold. But the way one of my deep tissue therapists told me, he's like, hey, this is how I view it. Because I asked him, I was like, hey, what do you think, cold versus hot? And he's like, cold is great. Cold is great for instant gratification and for the body to go, okay, we need to get over it quick, right? It works well for some. But heat brings blood flow. Blood flow brings nutrients and proteins to those areas of the body that need it. So if you're going to ask me which I prefer heat. I'm like, no wonder why my body has always responded better to heat too, because anytime I did like cold therapies, it doesn't work well. I don't know. It's a preference thing too. Maybe just because I've trained myself to do so much like heat work, it just made me better. But yeah.
Yeah. So you've done ice baths? Have you done a float tank?
Mm-hmm. I've done float tanks. I've done ice baths. It was just kind of like, I've done, what do you call it? What's this other one that people were doing? The
cryotherapy?
Cryo. Yeah, I've done cryo. I've done red light. I've done all of them.
How long did you do it for? What results did you notice?
It felt like a little bit less than a cold bath. And it was just more like instant. Like, oh, cool. Now I feel pretty good. And then I'll feel wrecked again a few training sessions later. So it's like, it's nothing that's permanent. But I see why people would use it, and if their body responds to it better. So everybody's different. Okay,
so you're pretty flexible. You don't have any, I think, ultimate truths. It's more so just whether it works for your system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, I feel like I've guinea pigged myself a ton, throughout my life as far as training goes, like certain foods, certain exercises, certain ways of doing cardio, certain stretches, certain whatever. I stick to that, but but at the same time, I still try and throw a loop to myself. Say, hey, we're gonna go try something new, and not keep the same patterns all the time. Break the cycle once in a while and see how your body responds.
So now that you're older, do
Mm-hmm.
you approach things differently than when you were younger? Or
Yeah. I lift weights a lot lighter these days than I used to. I'll lift heavy once in a while, but not every single session, because I don't want or need that type of soreness anymore, or my body just doesn't react that well when it's that sore from lifting weights.
is that for a separate goal, or do you think lifting weights ties to jiu-jitsu as well?
Absolutely. I think and that's funny. I was just talking about it with a couple of my athletes the other day. Like, for those that compete, especially, like, you got to have resistance training. At this day and age, everybody in whatever sport they're doing that wants to get better is training almost like a pro athlete, right? They're doing a lot of these things that, like, wow, I didn't think you could do that, but it's because it's all due to access. Everybody has access to all types of ways of training these days, all types of recovery modes, all types of foods and hydration sources and supplements and all these things. Everybody has access these days. So everybody wants to get that edge however they can.
Yeah. Let's talk about your career highlights. What did it feel like being a world champion?
That was great. I loved it. It's funny because I'm still chasing that. It was great. It's happened 3 times, and it was just like, it was almost like a blur, You try and be in the moment, of course, the best you can. And when it's going down, you're like, it just happened. That just happened. Right. And that was huge. My last big title I won was the Pan Ams in New York. And that was a major title that I won. And I've never competed that much in the East Coast. So when I went to New York, I was like, all right, we'll see how this goes. Went there, did my thing, and I did awesome. But it was just like, wow, I'm a Pan Am champ too. So I'm a world champion and a Pan Am champ. These are great things that every athlete wants to achieve when they're competitors in jiu-jitsu. They want to win those big titles. And here I am. I not only won 3 world titles, I won a Pan Am title. So to me, that was huge.
Yeah. So walk me through how you prepare for these matches and then what it's like being on the match itself.
Well, for me, I always do like at minimum 5 weeks of preparation. If I'm doing like the world championships, normally I do a 10-week prep. And a lot of that is caloric adjustment, diet adjustment in the beginning, and getting used to doing double days, like double cardio, double weightlifting days, double jiu-jitsu days. And it's a lot of extra work, and it's tiring. It's tiring and it's taxing on the body, and it requires a lot of you. And then you're almost good for nothing sometimes. Like, oh, let's go have fun. Like, no, I'm going to bed. Like you're only good for training and competing. And as things get closer, it becomes like a management of emotion and your nerves, because you can get to that point where you're like, oh God, I just want to compete. I just want to compete. And then you get there and your adrenaline has just burned you out completely. So knowing how to manage yourself is huge. And that's something I believe I've gotten better over the years. Knowing how to keep my cool as far as like entering big tournaments. Prior to that too, I'd say a lot of it has to do with like film study. Getting any kind of, match, footage that you can of your opponents, just to study what they do, the things and the, the little nuances of how to compete, those little things that are there and you can watch and work on, bring them over into the practice rooms. Like, hey, can you mimic this? Cause this is what this guy does, so all those little things. And it's tough too, because as I'm normally these big tournaments like that, when I'm preparing myself, I'm preparing my students too. So I'm preparing them on that same level. It's like, hey, I need you to go watch these videos of these people and bring me back that information, because we're going to mimic that type of training for you for your particular matches. So, it's a huge juggle. But come day of a tournament, there's been days where I was just so focused and so on, or I knew I was going to do well.
What does that feel like? And how can you tell that?
Is
there a certain calmness or clarity?
Yeah, it's just about clarity, I think, feeling good. Because trust me, I've been in situations where I was a hot mess. I'm like, oh God, this is going to not go well today, but I'm going to do my best. And sometimes it turned out great, sometimes it didn't, but that's just competing. But then even that, like, you could go in completely 100% prepared, but wind up losing, right? It's happened to me a bunch of times at the World Championships where I'm like, God damn it, I thought I did everything I could, but clearly this dude was better than me that day, or whatever, right? But it's my losses that I learned how to take in the practice room, right? That helped me to understand how to deal with and cope with the losses when it came to competing at a tournament. Because that's just how it goes, like it's going to be a winner, going to be a loser. Something has to give, and it could be you sometimes. You never know, and you need to know how to deal with it. Because in every sport you see bad losers. They lose it, they lose their tantrum, they lose their temper, and they blow up in some sort of way, be it verbally or physically doing something. And so you don't want to be that person, and maybe you just don't have enough adequate of practice in regards to knowing how to lose. So
what is it like being on the mat? Are any of these matches on YouTube?
Yeah, quite a few of them are. It's great. It's crazy because I think that a lot of times people that compete, they don't mimic that enough in training to know what that's like. And I see it as, if you do it in the practice room and you do it well over and over again, you're going to do it when you compete. So it carries over. So that's why I'm a big proponent on not being lazy in a training room, not being half-assed in a training room, and knowing you're here for X amount of time, take advantage of that time. And when you do, you'll see it shine through and carry over on the mat.
So what was it like being on the match of the World Champion match? Like during the match, like what was going through your mind? Were you in a flow state? Were you hyper aware? Did time slow down?
All I remember is I had so much tunnel vision. I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I was going to do anything and everything to just rip this dude's head off and just try and go after it. You obviously want to be composed, not make mistakes. And that's the biggest thing, is to not make errors and to fight perfect.
It seems like the tolerance for error is very low in jiu-jitsu.
Very, very, because that one tiny error can snowball and that could be your whole demise. So that's the biggest thing. Like in training, you can make errors and be okay in making those errors. But even then, as things start to get closer to a tournament, I teach my students the way I was trained. Like, you need to make less errors now when we're this close, because you need to know, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to settle for these. I'm going to actually make it the best in that situation. So
how small can an error be for it to decide a match?
Everything. It can be everything. I've lost some big matches over small errors.
Yeah. What are some of those errors or matches?
It was, God, I remember this was a technicality. When in the gi, when we compete in the gi and our belts and our gis and everything comes undone, the rule is to not touch it and not fix it until the referee tells you to, right? And I remember my belt came undone and it was falling. And I just, out of habit, just grab it and I start fixing it, and I'm taking my time. And then the referee threw up a penalty. And I was like, and that was the match.
Wow.
I lost it on a penalty. So it was a huge moment where I'm like, I'll never do that again.
So what's the story with the gi thing? Like, why is that why is that a requirement for only the referee to give you the go ahead?
Because they're in charge of the whole match and how it flows, right? If they want you to reset, they'll tell you, all right, stop. Let's go back to the center and let's reset. If they want you to fix your uniform, you stop, you fix it, right? Otherwise, the match just keeps going. And that's the way the flow should be. But again, in that particular moment, because it was a brain fart, right? I made a mental error, not knowing, like, damn it, I shouldn't have even touched my belt. Just let it fall and let him say, hey, pick up your belt, tie it. Because then I'd be on his time, right? And when I made that error, I'll never forget that. I was like, oh my God, I'm so mad at myself. But anyway.
Okay, what about some other errors that pop up during a match?
It could be anything. For instance, like today we were going over some strategy for one of my students that's competing, and some people like to play the edge, as we call it, meaning being like, if this is the boundary line, some people like to fight like right there because they want to score right there. And a lot of times, those movements and positions can be subjective, and the referee can say, hey, yeah, this action happened here, and you're going to score the point, or not at all, right? And so it can come down to that fine line of how you compete and what is your strategy of how you compete. There's so much strategy in competing and how people play. And those guys that like to play the line, it's almost like, you want to score and then fall out of bounds when you can. Like, for instance, like in basketball, right? If a guy's jumping out of bounds, but he still has the ball in his hands, if he shoots it and he makes it, that's legit. That's scored. But if he steps out of bounds and then he shoots it, you can't do that, right? Same thing in jiu-jitsu. As soon as you step out of bounds and you try and score, no score. But if I started in bounds and then it fell out, I scored. Make sense? So just some of those strategies, but it can come down to a referee's technical error too. I've been in matches where I lost on technicality because the referee misjudged the call. So bad calls even by refs.
All right. So do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners out there, whether it's from the mindset perspective or things that people should consider for even law enforcement, for example?
I think in general, find a routine in life, stick with it, and do it over and over and over again. If it's bettering you, then you're off to a good start at least. Learn some life skills, whether it be jiu-jitsu or any kind of self-defense that can keep you safe and those around you safe. Definitely. It has nothing to do with learning how to shoot even. Like some people like, oh, I'm just going to shoot a gun. Let's say you don't have a gun. You better know how to do it. You better know what to do with your hands, right? So again, learning how to keep yourself safe, because I see jiu-jitsu as breathing, as eating. It's just essential. It's a life skill. And it's something that I do and I sharpen every single day. And when I don't, I feel like I'm missing out, right? I'm missing something. And to me, that's huge. And, everybody has like, oh, I don't have time, or, well, you make time, right? You make time for the things that you want in life. And whether it be if you're in law enforcement, for sure, pick up jiu-jitsu. If you want to learn something new and learn a new skill set, try jiu-jitsu. You always had it in your head that want to do something new, try jiu-jitsu. It's just, again, I'm biased, obviously, but I think so much joy and greatness can come out of it. Has nothing to do with even competing. It's just finding a new side of yourself that you probably didn't know.
Yeah, well said. Speaking of guns, what are your thoughts on, like I heard some parts of the country where they want to give guns to teachers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good idea or bad idea?
I think
considering
it's a great
that
idea.
These teachers may not know how to use a gun?
Well, I mean, it goes back to training, right? Teaching people. Here we are putting our children in the hands of another person for education purposes. But are they there to protect them? They should be, right? They should be. And if not, then law enforcement should be there, because they're our first line of protection in the community. But there has to be some sort of immediate protection, because, with all these school shootings over the years that go back, way back, could something have been done? Yeah, absolutely. You're not asking teachers to be heroes, but if they know how to handle themselves, I'm all for it. I'm all for protecting the kids.
Yeah, I think the goal is definitely agreed upon. The thing I wonder about is, like, it goes back to how you mentioned that certain vocal critics of the police were putting to that situation where they started shooting everybody, right? Yeah, I actually wonder if like these teachers are going to be similar, because I think it seems like you can't just drop into law enforcement abilities,
right?
Yeah, so to expect teachers to do that?
No, but again, you're not trying to teach them to be cops. Yeah. You're teaching them how to handle a weapon and address a situation, right? Clearly, if someone's there to hurt, maim, or try to harm children in any kind of way, there's the threat, right? They should be able to handle the threat. Mm-hmm. I would expect, if my child is under someone's care, that I thought you were there to protect these kids. Like, it can vary, I'm sure, in regards to what is deemed proper for a teacher to learn, but they should have some sort of skill set. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, learn a life-saving skill set.
Yeah. I think I would find it fair if like whoever these teachers are would be one paid adequately and two trained properly versus like here's a gun, go figure it out.
Right. I mean, clearly you can't do that, and just like putting police officers out there, you got to have them trained, and this goes back to where money goes to in these communities, like money into schools for protection, complete protection, and you see them. Oh, we have you have security guards that do metal detectors. Well, that's great, but you're not going to stop everything that comes through the driveway. People come up and do drive-bys all the time, or people go onto campuses, as we've seen in these shootings, and they try and do something. Or it was a student that had some access to some sort of gun and went on campus and did something, right? So again, if a superior on the campus or a teacher knew how to handle themselves, I think these situations would be different.
Yeah, well said. How can people support you, and then any shout outs like to mention?
I'm not one to always like seek notoriety or anything. So listen to your show. That's how I see it. You want to learn about me? That's great. I'm out there. But I think
what platforms are you on?
I'm on social media as far as Facebook and Instagram. Saber Jiu-Jitsu, it's on Instagram, as well as me, Bryant Pangelinan. I'm on Instagram. Facebook as well. And then we have our website, www.saberbjj.com. That's SABREBJJ.com. We get a lot of hits on there every day in regards to inquiries about training and coming to, train with me and all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot of great things, for the community other than just jiu-jitsu. And that's how I see it. And that's where I feel like jiu-jitsu is my platform, and if I can use that platform to help others in the community, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I think you work with some underserved communities through jiu-jitsu. What do you do in that regard?
I work with disabled vets with a foundation called We Defy Foundation. They're certified through the VA to help disabled veterans. I work with a foundation called Black Belts for Butterflies that helps to create awareness and funding for children with autism. I've worked with other agencies like Mission 22 and Adopt a Cop, and we have another one coming up called MVP, and that's based out of Vegas. And again, it's all about helping disabled veterans and people of less fortune to get back and try and be better themselves in some sort of way. And jiu-jitsu is our platform.
So for these disabled vets, you're teaching them jiu-jitsu. Is that what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's serving as therapy for them, and then get that camaraderie back that these guys need, and it's served a great purpose all over the world. Matter of fact, because if you look them up, the We Defy Foundation, WeDefy.org, they do great things now worldwide. They were a small little foundation based out of Texas, and it was just a couple of my good friends who were former Army Rangers. These guys that were just doing great things, within Texas. And then they're like, wow, we can do something on a nationwide scale. And now they're on a worldwide scale. I just went to a gala that they held a couple months ago, and they're raising millions of dollars for these disabled vets, which is above and beyond what even the VA is doing for the vets. My dad was a disabled vet, so I take that kind of stuff, to heart, when I see these type of situations happen. And, I have a lot of friends that were disabled vets and had PTSD and all these things. I'm like, God, these guys need help. These people just need help. They just need somebody that can care. So.
Yeah. Are there different teaching or movement techniques for someone who's disabled to?
No, but it's just working with them. It takes a little bit more grooming, I guess you could say, getting them to be okay with what's going on, because everybody's different. How people react and respond to even violence. Sometimes it's different, especially for guys that come from that type of background of war and attrition of those natures. So it's not anything real different as far as techniques, but it's just getting them in that brotherhood, in that group, and making them feel like, hey, you're part of this now. You are part of something, because you got to think they were part of something greater than themselves when they were in the military. They were there for a purpose. Now we have to show them that you are part of something, again, greater than yourself, and you yourself are the purpose.
That's a great point, because coming back from service, you can easily lose your purpose, lose your community, and not have a purpose and feel lost.
They lose all identity because in the military they were somebody, right? In the military they had a purpose to go carry out a job and do something, and come back and do it over and over again. And once they get out, they don't have anything anymore.
Yeah, there was this author. His name is Johan Hari. He's from the UK, and he says that a lot of people think that the opposite of addiction is sobriety, which is a fair assumption, right? But in his research, in his opinion, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety; it's connection or community. Yeah. So like one of the things that he was studying was like what happens when all these army vets from Vietnam came back, for example, where they're going to be hooked on opium, pretty much, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when they came back, since they were able to walk back into community and connection, then a lot of them actually didn't maintain that addiction.
Yeah, and you know, my dad, again, disabled vet, PTSD, the whole nine. He navigated, I don't know how, some way, somehow, and raised us, did well in his career, all these things. But I saw it catch up with him later in life. And that was sad to see because, you know, he was a senior citizen by the time he passed. But it was like, wow, it was things that caught up with him later that probably could have been dealt with in his earlier life that there was no resources then. So
what are some changes or some transformations you've seen for these disabled vets on the program?
Again, just resources. Seeing that they can do more than what they're allotted to do. Normally, like with VA, my dad had to fight to get his benefits from the VA, right? And with these organizations like We Defy Foundation, for instance, they pay for a vet's jiu-jitsu membership, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, that there's no sweat off their back, no dime out of their pocket. It's just all through the We Defy Foundation. So again, knowing that there's companies out there that want to do things actively and not just sit idle and say, oh, here's some meds. Here, take this. You know, no, we're going to go put you in a program and you're going to be part of that program. You're going to be part of that community now, right? It's difficult. There's some, learning curves, but they get it and then they start to see and understand once again. It's kind of like they're riding a bike all over again. So.
Yeah. Well, Bryant, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you coming in and shedding some insight into this mysterious world, for me at least. Yeah.
Well, great to be here. I really appreciate you having me here, and it's been great. Again, if you ever want to come into my world even more and let it be less mysterious, come on in and train jiu-jitsu with us.
Yeah, well said. Any closing thoughts or shout-outs you'd like to mention?
Just to my family, my friends, and my team. And thanks to everybody. And obviously, it was one of my students that introduced us. So I appreciate Andy being there and hooking this up.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you, man.
Thank you again.